Hey everybody, what is going on? It is Brian. We are back and we have another video that we're throwing into the Vault series. And today we are taking the final sips that I have of a sample of Booker's Rye that I had. So Booker's Rye came out in 2016. It is the only rye to have come out under the Booker's umbrella. This was barrel strength and 13 years old. I do not have a whole lot of this left, but this historically had been one of my favorite ryes, mainly from the experience that I had drinking it. So we're gonna dive into the nose. I'll pull a whole lot of notes if I can out of the nose, and then I do not have a lot on the palate, but I'll talk through that as well. On the nose, with this being, I think, north of 130 proof, you would think that it's going to zip you right away with a ton of alcohol, and it doesn't do that. Honestly, it gives you a lot of really familiar flavors to what you like about Beam in general. So you have what I would call that kind of Band-Aid-y, kind of old medicinal char note to it. It still has plenty of that. It still has plenty of this kind of cherry medicinal, little bit of note to it. But in this pour, it's in a pleasing way. I feel like I've talked about that in various pours before. Sometimes it's in a negative way. In this way, it's in a positive. You get some cinnamon, you get some allspice, you get some orange citrus, you get a good amount of oak and a lot of leather. Yeah, and I would say there's a little bit of maple in there, there's a little bit of caramel in there, and aside from like this kind of cinnamon bark spice lean that it has, it still plays pretty similar to what I would think on a Knob Creek. So it's not all out of the ordinary for notes that you might get there. Let's go ahead and dive into the taste of this one. Man, this rye engulfs the palate. It's spicy in all the right ways. It doesn't tingle, overly spiced. It just fills the palate with allspice, with baking spices, with cinnamon, with orange, with a little bit of anise. The perfect amount of oak comes in there. A little bit of that leather comes in there. A touch of like a caramel cake batter sort of thing. It's dark. It's deeper in there. It's not quite as plain of a caramel as we might normally talk about or kind of standard with bourbon, but it's definitely there. It's rich. It's what I first experienced this rye. It was unlike any pour I ever had because my palate went on this roller coaster ride. The flavor came in and it took me up and then down and then back again. And that experience is something I've only had on maybe one other pour besides that. But it was the experience and it was the memory of drinking with my friend Andrew. The first time I tried it, that really set this apart. Let's go in with this final last drop of a sip. We can see if we can pull out some more flavor. Man, a lot of those nice oak tannins, beautifully weaved in with some dark chocolate notes, but then perfect rye spice. And this is just a good showing of a really well done, higher proof, well-aged rye, age-stated rye. And this is something you just don't really see on the market. Aside from this pour, another favorite of mine that I'd love to talk about on the channel, and I almost recorded a couple of weeks back, is the Kentucky Owl Rye. When that first came out, it was an 11-year rye. And while it's a little bit more herbal, it is very enjoyable as well for some of the same reasons as this is. But to kind of sum this up, I would say, again, kind of like I did on the nose, it's got more kind of baking spices and just spice-driven nature, rye, black pepper, all those things characteristic of rye that kind of cut through and layer in that lets you know that it's a rye. But it gives you a lot of flavors that you love about Beam, about Booker's in general. So this is just a perfect 13-year-old expression of what Beam can do. And it's been one of my favorite Rise to try. And I just wanted to get on here quickly and do another wrap up of it for the Volt and close out what I had in my sample jar. Thanks again, as always, everybody. Let me know if you're enjoying the content in the Volt. It's not necessarily things that are accessible anymore. It's not necessarily things that, we can find out in the store, but I like kind of diving into some of these older pours and reminiscing about some of the flavors that things had back in the day when they released and how good they still are compared to the things that we normally talk about here on the channel. If there's samples that you want to hear me talk about, I'd love to accept them. Let me know, send me a message either on Instagram. You can find my links to the handles down below, or just reach out to me here on YouTube or leave me a comment down below. If you've tried Booker's Rye, I'd love to hear what you all think about it, again, in the comments below. If you want more content, subscribe to the Entry Proof Podcast. That's a podcast that I do with Drew P. Whiskey. He's also here on YouTube, and we're live on his channel on Thursday nights. If you want to support what I'm doing here on the channel, what Drew's doing on the channel, the barrel picks that we have and access to them, consider subscribing to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/entryproofpodcast. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you all later.